Yeah, so welcome. This is God Complex True Crimes Behind Stained Glass. And the purpose of this podcast is to give victims, survivors, a voice. When they've been not had a voice, they've been silenced. We want to give them a voice. We want to bring awareness to these ministries and what's going on. We speak a lot about the ramp because all three of us have been there for many years, each varying differently. But the purpose of this is to give a voice to the voiceless, the people that they've silenced and they ran off and all of that. So I'd like you to just introduce you to Jenny and Joey. Everybody knows them, our co-hosts, and Joey is going to take off the introduction of our first guest.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. And yeah, so right here is Sean, an old friend of mine, and he was a member of Chosen, which we'll get into in a bit. He has a long history with the ramp. You were there before I was, and maybe you stayed there after I left. I'm actually not sure when you left, but we'll find out.
I tried to forget all of that.
I hear you. But yeah, so Sean, we weren't in the same class. You were in the class a year after mine or before mine. But so you were one of the second years when I joined. But yeah, we kind of hung out in similar circles.
Oh, yeah.
Had a tight friend group, and it was good times.
Well, while we were there, it was good.
But
guess.
but yeah, so I guess to get us started, we're just going to. Well, Jennifer, did you have something you wanted to say before?
Um,
Yeah, I think Jenny, you were going to kick us off with the questions, our first
oh
round of
yeah, I
questions.
can. So Sean, if you just want to go ahead and start us off with how you got introduced to the ramp in general, and what it looked like your time getting up to the ramp and then going and being at the ramp.
Yeah. First time I went to the ramp was probably 2001. I was 10 or 11, I don't remember. I went with my youth group, and just like every other youth group, you go there and you just fall in love with it. There's everything about it. Like, God's there. You see people who are energetic in a passion for God that you just don't see at your church, right? So you fall in love. It's got modern music. It's got cool lights. It's got all the little things. It was awesome. So me and my youth group, we fell in love. We would go twice a year to the winter ramps and the summer years, every year after that, up until 2010. That was the same year I graduated high school, and that was the same year they started RSM. It was originally a ramp internship, but they changed it to RSM.
That's right.
I don't know, 2 years after. I don't remember.
They've changed it a few times. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's Ramp University.
Yeah.
They're not a real university, but that's what they call it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Alright. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
they're not accredited in any.
They have a 4-year unaccredited university.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
So you were there in 2010 when they started the school.
Yeah, and it was, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do after like high school or whatever, but I just knew I wanted to do something like the ramp. I wanted to be a part of a ministry that just did that, be around people who were like that. And I think it was the year before, 2008, was when they announced Camp Ramp.
Oh, really?
So I think, or they announced it like a year before, a little bit before RSM started, they announced Camp Ramp, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm going there and be a part of the ramp. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to, like, be a part of this ministry, work at the Camp Ramp. And then the summer ramp was when they announced, like, the internship thing. So I signed up right away, and I got accepted right after high school. So everything just started to, like, click, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is perfect. I got going to the RSM school, and I'm going to stay there, try to be part of the ramp and all that kind of stuff. So fast forward to when we get there. It's 2010. I meet all my classmates, and the first year is just awesome. It really is. You get used to the environment. The first couple of months, you're getting used to the intensity, the seriousness, and all this kind of stuff. And that's all I remember, if I'm being honest. I don't remember much of what they preach. I don't remember much of anything else. I just remember it was this intense environment.
Yeah.
And
And what do you mean by intense? Could you kind of like clarify for people who have never been to the ramp or don't really know?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're like an average church kid, like in high school, whatever, like you go to church, you do the church thing, and then you do like the world thing, the secular thing in school, and it's like, right, you just that's kind of what you do in high school. At least that's what I did. And then you go to the ramp, and then they call you to this higher standard. They're like, you can't live that way anymore. You got to do this. You're here at the school. This is what you're here for. So I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna, pull up your bootstraps and get serious. And from that point on, it just felt like it was just drilling into us. It turned into a boot camp. It's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. I mean, we had to dress differently. They made us put on dress clothes halfway through the year, phone checks, house checks. And they say they would do these things, but they never did them to some of us. So we were just always constantly just in fear of they just show up to your house or just take your phone one day. So it was just, so what I mean by intense, it's just a constant, like, you're always looking out for everything going on.
Like you're always under a microscope.
Always under a microscope, always feeling like they'll find out if the littlest thing is wrong. And that just builds up over time. And, over some of the years of my school, like, the silliest things would be called out in, like, rebukes to the classroom. You guys remember the rebukes? It's
for yawning. That was a big one.
Yawning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember when your classmate fell asleep?
I don't think that was my class. I just because
I'm talking about Sean's class. It was in the first year.
Yeah,
I don't want to say his name, but that was bad.
Yeah, I nodded off a few times pretty bad. I'll admit. I'm not a morning person. That's just me.
Same.
Yeah, no, the way you describe the culture is spot on. It really is like a boot camp, and they would proudly say that. Like, that's in their marketing, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hear iron sharpens iron, forged in the fire.
Yeah.
And that's, okay, I get that, but that was it. Like, that was it. There was nothing else. It was just pressure. The whole time I was there, I just felt pressure to be perfect.
Yep.
But not in relationship with God, not anything like that. They tell you to do that, you got to do that on your time and everything like that. But it was just a pressure to be perfect for them. Like, we had to appeal to them, we had to please them, we had to check mark all the boxes for them, for the teachers, for all of that, not for ourselves. It didn't feel like we were really doing anything for ourselves. I don't know. It just if you didn't fit their standard, they just kind of brushed you off.
Right.
Now you seem to have done a really good job in fitting that standard and being on the good side of things because they ultimately invited you to be on their special ministry team chosen. Can you tell us some about like how that transpired and about chosen and what it was like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, my youth group was one of those youth groups that we copied Chosen. I mean, our services looked exactly like a Chosen service. We did.
You were pre-chosen.
I was pre-chosen, yeah. So I mean, I get there and everyone thinks that I just want to be on Chosen, and I thought like that would be really cool. And yes, I would like that. That was cool, but that's not ultimately in my heart what I wanted. It would be really cool, and yeah, I did want it. Like I did want it, but I didn't care for it. And then, and when that really like settled, and I was really like, I really just want to be a part of this ministry in any way. Then it was like within a few days, they asked me to be on Chosen. So I was like, oh, like that feels like a sign. Like I finally just kind of, really just understood what I wanted. And now they want me to be on Chosen. So I'm like, this is awesome. I'm so happy. I know all of the dances already, so I'm gonna fit right in.
So you were the kind of kids who learned them like for years before.
Yeah. I mean, they used to. I think even before they had the ramp, they had VHSs.
Yeah. Do you still have any of those?
Oh yeah. I
could use them in some videos.
But I would put the TV behind me facing this way on a mirror, and I would learn on the mirror the dances, and then I would teach them.
Wow.
Right. So like, total Chosen nerd, like total nerd, right? Yeah, so it happens. I get asked to be on Chosen as me, and I think two other people were in the room, and they asked us to be on Chosen, and like we were so excited, we're like, absolutely yes. And then we get on Chosen, and it doesn't really feel like anything special. It didn't feel like it was. It didn't feel like it was anything like worth anything. After being on there for like a month, because we got asked to be on Chosen, maybe did like one Chosen service, but that was about it. And like the first 2 months, there wasn't anything. We hardly did practices. We didn't meet up for Bible studies. We didn't meet up for prayers. We didn't do anything. And then when I was asked to be on Chosen, I was asked to be on the dance team. So at that time, they split it between, there were 3 teams on Chosen. There was the ministry team, so the ones that preach and go pray at the altar, the worship team, obviously, and the dance team, obviously. And then there were a few who were a part of everything. So some would be on the worship team and the ministry team and the dance team, or the dance team and the ministry team, right? So being as it was just on the dance team and having to wait for them to say like, okay, yes, you guys can go pray for the people down there now, you don't really feel like you're a part of it. And
So you're a special minister, but you had a lot of restrictions. You weren't free to pray for people or
and it was and again they were very lenient with that. I mean, if every time it was like, there was a moment, they let us go pray. But it's still, there was always that like dance team over here, worship team, and so we just still felt separated, even though I felt like Chosen was just one big group. And like, yes, you had leadership, but leadership was still like a part of like the big family. But it just felt so separated. Like it was just, oh, you're on the dance team. You're a part of the ramp on the dance team now. I was like,
there's like a hierarchy kind of feeling in the different groups.
Oh yeah. The dance team, we were kind of at the bottom. And then you had worship team, ministry team, and anyone who floated was, up there.
So yeah, I don't really think I have ever seen you when you were on Chosen, like be one of the guys who would take the mic and do some sort of little preaching mini sermon at a conference. So that's why because the dance team wasn't allowed to do that.
No, if we had a word or anything, we could go share it, and then they would say like yes or no. Like, yes, you can go share this, or no, we're not going to share that.
And who would you share that with, Sean? Who was like the approver, I guess, of something like that?
I think anyone on leadership team.
Okay.
I think, because I remember going to 3, I remember going to Brian, Casey, and Karen at one point and letting them know like, I'm feeling something, and all 3 of them were like, yeah, sure.
So, I know as a student, they really made us all feel like we wanted to be close to leadership. They made a relationship with members of leadership kind of feel like something that everyone was aspiring to. And we would look, and from the outside, we would look at people on Chosen and think, well, they must have like a great connection with them.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
No. And so my experience is a little different because I can look back in hindsight. I remember at the school assessments, they sit you down and personal assessment and tell you everything you're doing wrong, not a good job, but you're doing all this wrong.
And they would scream. I mean, they would yell. It wasn't just, I'll fix this. It was, you suck and no one here likes you and you're probably going to go to hell. Like I said,
and when they screamed, I was there around those assessments. These weren't private. You could hear them screaming at the students outside of wherever these assessments, all through the lobby. Anybody could hear this because they would have them in different rooms at the ramp. And so this wasn't like even a private rebuke. Everybody around knew you were getting tore up.
Assessment time, everyone showed up and hung out at the ramp. You go one by one, and you see your friend leaving crying.
We could hear the yelling, and then we'd watch them walk out. Just crying, hauling their ass, and be like, I'm next, here we go.
Like, there was one, they got the name wrong. Steven, do you remember this story? They got the guy's name wrong, and his grades were, on the wrong name, the grades were bad.
Oh, yeah.
And they yelled at him for it. They found out that it was wrong and didn't even apologize. Like, they didn't apologize.
They told that story as a joke. Yeah,
I remember.
Wow.
They would talk about it like, oh yeah, but we're not perfect. I mean, one time we screamed at a kid for an hour and a half and it was the wrong kid. And it was just...
And that just shows how unattached they are from us, that they didn't even know who they're talking to. Like, you think you have a right to talk to me like that and to correct me about who I am, and you don't even know my name.
Yeah.
So wait a
That's
second,
wild.
Sean, are you saying that they had someone else's paperwork and they were speaking to a student? Like, I have John's paperwork and this is Sean, and I'm yelling at Sean over John's paperwork? They didn't even know who they were talking to?
Yeah, they saw, because they had the first name was the same. So they saw the grades and was like, this is you. I'm going to tell you that you're doing everything wrong, your grades are slipping, yell at you, and then it's not the right
So
person.
they don't even know who they're talking to at some points. They're just rebuking you to rebuke you.
Yeah, they just look at what's in front of you, and I just, But in mine, right before I was on Chosen, I remember, because I like to hang out with the people on Chosen. They were my friends. And I remember before that, I was in my personal assessment, and one of the leaders looked at me and said, they think Chosen, like I need to stop focusing on, just Chosen and fellowship with just Chosen people, because he thinks like me being on Chosen is not going to happen. Like it's not going to happen. He was thinking that it was on its way out. Like Chosen was like a dying breed.
Oh yeah, there was a moment where Chosen almost was discontinued. I don't know the word.
And then a couple weeks later, I get asked to be on Chosen. Didn't make the connection. But the us three, we were pretty good dancers. I'm not trying to, toot my own horn, but we were pretty good dancers. That was another, like, one of the things I noticed, and I was like, okay, I think maybe it was just an attempt to, like, save Chosen. But, again, I don't know. It's just what I can see looking back. And that's how it felt.
We have kind of heard that, Sean, that Chosen was actually going out the door, and then they did, like, a dance, and it kind of went viral. I think it was the We Stand, We Rise one, maybe?
Yeah, Destroy. Yeah.
I think it was that one. I couldn't remember the name of it, but yeah, so that makes sense because you were a really good dancer, and yeah, so I think that they probably did that strategically. And not saying that like you're not amazing. I'm just saying that it makes sense. Like all the connections, I think you're pretty accurate on that.
Yeah.
So they brought in some great dancers to try to boost Chosen. But meanwhile, the instructors were telling you that you're not going to be on Chosen. It's dying. All that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
what proceeded after that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joey.
So I was on Chosen, I think for about a year. Traveled with him to a few places, and then I think it was at the end of the year around graduation. Again, I don't know what time frame it was. Miss Karen asked me to step down off Chosen. She said she needed people on stage that she could pull from, like spiritually, to have her back, and she just wasn't feeling that with me.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
What does that
And when
mean?
was this,
Spiritually
Sean?
have her back.
I don't know, but at the time it's like it's Miss Karen. I'm having a conversation with Miss Karen right now. It's like anything you say, okay.
And when did you say the time frame was?
It was. Let's see, first 2 years into anything. I think it was my third year, so 2013, 2014, possibly.
Okay. So she tells you that you're no longer on Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, did you stay with the ramp for much longer?
I did. The same day she told me that, someone came who was going to be a part of the school. They were starting School of Performing Arts. And the person who was heading that came to me and was like, hey, so I know what Miss Karen just told you, but I want you to be on staff or to help start this School of Performing Arts. So, now I had no reason to leave because now it's like, oh, now I'm doing something in the arts thing, which is what I love to do. So I'm like, okay, now to me it was just I go from here to here. So I was like, okay, so it happened the same day. I didn't really have time to like, oh no, I'm not on Chosen anymore. What did I do? It just happened so smoothly. I was like, okay, this is another sign from God. Like this is okay.
Right. Well, that now, at what point did you start to feel like the environment was toxic or abusive or even cult-like? And do you consider it to be a cult now?
Yeah. Looking back on it, 100%. If you just hang out with the people in Hamilton, they do not like the ramp. They call it a cult. They do not like it. They say it's just ruining the town. And I used to work at the McDonald's there. So, I've witnessed firsthand that these conferences, these kids would come in, and they're kids. They're kids. They're going to come in. They're trying to have fun. They're throwing dirty towels at us. These people coming from ramp conferences, from Miss Karen's ministry, and they're just wrecking the town. Having a good time. They're on vacation or something. So I could see that the hatred and bitterness kind of build, but I mean, being on the inside of the ramp, it's a bubble. You live in a bubble. I mean,
That's true.
the way we talked was so different, and
Yeah.
everyone talked the same. We'd say the same things. Everyone
Yes.
like, someone would come up with like a new like cool term, and it would spread. But it's just in like our little community, because I had friends back home, and when I would say these things, they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it's something we say back there," and it's like, "Right, don't say that around us. That's weird."
Yeah. They very much have their own culture that makes everything outside of that feel off and feel not right.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard this from a lot of people. When you leave, it's a culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you leave,
Oh, yeah.
because you're surrounded by everyone who thinks the same, like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
You got the same goal, and okay, but that just is ingredients for a cult to start mixing.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking the same. Everyone's on the same page of one person's vision.
Yeah.
It just got weird, and I started to feel like that on Chosen. Like if things I started to pick up, because I was not even like on the inside. I was just in the green room. Like I made it up 3 steps in that green room on conferences. Like that's all I did, and it got weird. Like you could feel. I felt less important or less valuable on Chosen than I was a part of the like RSM or the community. Because like it was like I used this before, but it was like it felt like Anakin Skywalker is I don't know, it's my favorite analogy. But you know how they made him master, but they didn't give him a seat like on the council.
Yeah,
that's how I felt. Like you can go up here, but you're just here because we want you here. Like you're not supposed to be here, or it's just it felt.
So you never felt like you really belonged, or there
No.
was like that sense of being accepted?
Yeah, there was none of that. I mean, people tried it. People were friendly, of course, but there wasn't an actual like. I feel like I belong here.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, whenever you're on stage at a conference, was there like did Karen have complete control even of what you could do, what you could say? Like, what was it? I guess my question is, how much control does she have over the image and Chosen life of her?
Okay, so the image is huge. Okay, we had gauges, and they would ask them to take it out all the time because they just didn't want them on there. We didn't really ask why. Okay, you just when your leader is telling you to do something, you do it. But it was every time, and like I'd get ones that were like skin colored, and then they'd be like, no, like you don't have anything in your ears. I like to like do stuff with my hair. Like I used to spike it, colored it, and I would do that, and then all of a sudden there's a meeting about how we can't do stuff. Oh, like we can't have makeup. Like girls can't put makeup on that's too like flashy. It's got to be stage makeup, but very plain. And like that's with the black is just supposed to hide everything. So the image is supposed to be
Perfect.
very perfect and very very plain. No.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Just very like
So controlling, yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't wear hair a certain way. Couldn't like earrings, things like that. Things that would like stand out. None of it. I forgot what I was gonna say. What was that word?
Well, did you ever get corrected even on Chosen? I mean, as a student, you had personal assessments, but were there things kind of like that for Chosen members who got out of line or had some sort of issue with leadership?
There probably was, but I never saw any of that. If ever there was, they came up and like, hey, you guys need to do this. We pretty much just did it. No questions asked. Some people would grumble, but we ultimately just
No, from the outside looking in, you see Chosen on the platform. They're very engaged. They're very, in their body motions and their posture and all of that. Tell me some about that and what it was like to be on the platform and behind the ministers and how that all unfolds. Is that all genuine and authentic, or what's that like?
To a degree, I think there is some. I think some people. At least when I was on, I think most of us on Chosen were genuine in that. And from like a Chosen's point of view on that stage, it was we wanted to reflect we wanted to reflect Jesus. We wanted to reflect God, reflect all of it. So we couldn't. I'm trying to remember how she said it. I think she said we were just a vessel. So our goal on stage was just supposed to like make them look at him. So how we acted, I don't. I mean, I guess you could. How we acted, I guess, was a show, but it was on purpose. So we were really like demonstrative in our movements to, I guess, to encourage them. You know what I mean? But
Well, you're held up as
So
an
you,
example for everyone else to
Yeah.
mirror, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess, almost it is authentic if it's big enough. So like if you're like on stage and you're having a moment with God and you're just and it's the music's up, but you're just kind of going back and forth, like you'd kind of stand out. But if you're having a real moment, you know what I mean? If you're something's going on and you're like, you know what I mean? You kind of had to go with the flow. Even if you were dealing with something, you kind of put it aside, you go with the flow and you just reflect God. That's the only thing I can remember. It's just, I tried to just clear my mind. I'm like, I'm not here for me, I'm here for them. Sometimes I should have been there for me. A lot of the services I feel like were for me, but being on stage, it's like, you know, I always felt guilty.
Yeah.
yeah. So in that reflecting God, so it sounds to me like your guys' hearts were very authentic, and I want to reflect the Lord to these people. I want to, all eyes to Jesus, right, kind of thing, and very demonstrative. When you were demonstrative, was it for the purpose of setting an example, or was it demonstrative to God?
It was it was almost split. It was almost to get Miss Karen's approval.
Mm,
Mm.
Because like if you're big enough and if you're going for it and you have big tears, she's gonna see that. And
mm,
that's like from my history with like all the years I've been to the ramp, when that's happening, there's usually attention from her there. So in my mind, it's if I, like their pray through kind of thing. If I worship through and I really just, engage with all the intensity of my heart, like they'll see that and they'll be like, good job, Sean. And that's like affirmation
Right.
that I'm doing the right thing with me and God. That affirmation started to come from God and it started to move to them. I needed their affirmation.
mm.
Well, at least it's personally for me.
Yeah.
Just my
Right. Yeah.
I would just try so hard. Yes, for breakthrough, yes, for them, but ultimately because I wanted to be right and I needed their affirmation, their approval, them to tell me I was. Leadership.
Right. And Sean, that's, I feel like not just you. We've mentioned this before, and we call it the Karen effect, where people feel that they want to get that kind of approval from her. I've even mentioned it myself that when I was in my assessment, they asked me, what's going on? We feel like you're not jumping around, you're not shouting and praying like you used to. And I said, honestly, I've just gotten to a point in myself where I don't need Miss Karen's approval anymore. And even though I wasn't on Chosen or anything, it's like the students felt that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. So they talk about how the whole ramp image of worshiping bombastically and getting all that attention.
Yeah.
They talk about how that's a
Like a
spirit.
club.
Well, yeah, yes, but they always said it was about maintaining a spirit of excellence, which somebody in my comments reminded me of that phrase. They say, "Oh, it's a spirit of excellence. We're just trying to give God our best." But really, it was about getting the approval of the people that we were under. It was about them affirming us because we were starved for anything kind from them, basically.
Yeah.
It was about appeasing humans who were leading us, not appeasing God. Even though some of us may have had that as our heart even originally, there's still that level of, I'm really doing this for them because there's so much of a manipulative hand over all of us at the ramp.
Yeah.
Whether you're a student or chosen or staff,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was time, and it happened multiple times from the platform to the church community about you need to be sitting on the edge of your seat, leaning in, that whole leaning
Yeah.
in stuff. So I imagine it was much more intense. If they'll do that to us, in the pews as grown adult church folks than the ones that they have under their direct
Oh yeah,
purview. I
absolutely. I
imagine
mean,
it much
it,
more.
it goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning of this, which some of you may have joined more recently, didn't hear the very start of this. But Sean was talking about how there. Sorry, I got this right. Sean was talking about how that level of control was so common or so constant that there's a feeling of being watched at all times. And I experienced that as well.
All the time.
I mean, we all did. It really affected me for a while afterwards. I was constantly feeling like people were watching me. I know I felt that too.
That's where that mindset came from.
Yeah.
There was a few times like, okay, I like to play video games, and I would stay up kind of late and play video games, and like a day later, there's a rebuke to the whole class about staying up late playing video games.
Yeah. Like, how do they know?
Like, how did you know? Like,
and don't say it because it wasn't. It was
snitches.
yes, and it was
They
like
had
little things.
Yeah.
They would do little things like that, like parties happening like this. Like you guys were out past curfew or something like that, and it's like there was 5 of them. So either someone snitched or someone watched them.
And we know that they would watch people.
Yeah.
We've had interviews with other people who have confirmed that they were literally being followed around town by people at the ramp. They would have our social medias watched at all times, so they could get our phones, I mean everything. And they would literally follow us around town if need be.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Or they watched my social media and staff like a hawk and tried to control my social media while I was there.
Yeah. So level of control. So Sean, at what point, or what was the first domino that fell where you started to realize that this place wasn't okay?
Whew. When Damon left, that whole situation was so sketch, and they didn't tell us anything. But the problem with that was, and I'm still kind of upset about this a little bit, is everyone in my class knew except for me and another friend. And me and her, we would joke because it literally, somehow it just split our class. My class specifically. I don't know, like, I don't really know what happened. Everyone else knew that, like, it just, people were saying different things, and I was like, I don't even care anymore. Like, at that point, when everyone had different stories and everything, and it split the class, I was like, this isn't just like Damon Thompson's going in another direction. It's something happened, and they're not saying anything about it. Because I remember after that, they asked us all forward, and each one of the teachers like looked us in the eye, and sort of like, "How are you feeling?"
We lost your audio.
Yep.
1 sec. Someone tried to call me. I think it screwed with the live. Are we still on? You guys?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Good. So can you keep
I had
up where you left off, Sean?
Yeah.
Just that it was sketch and nobody really knew, and then you were like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Yeah, and then I think a few months is when Bryn Waddell left, the worship leader before Catherine. I thought that was kind of weird too. I figured he was just gonna follow Damon. That was just his thing. But that also, it just kind of got around and was just, everyone was like hush hush about it. And I don't know, it was weird. And I felt something was off, but it's not my problem. It's, leadership's thing and whatever. So I just kind of let it go. But that's when I realized things weren't always truthful. There's a lot of sugarcoating when things are being said. It's a lot of beating around the bush, a lot of, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that was my first year, so.
Okay.
So I saw that one and then missed a couple of years worth of stuff.
But that was the first kind of red flag that you knew something was up with this place.
Yeah, because it's just the amount of tension that built like immediately after it was announced. There was a tension everywhere for like the next couple of months to about a year.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that too. It was very tense for a while. And then Dutch Sheets left soon after that.
Yeah.
And Dutch leaving was a shock.
That was a big one too.
And the general kind of rumor that was always being spread was that it was because of their refusal to listen to and obey Karen as their leader, which led right into that service where she had people come up and swear their allegiance to her.
That was so weird.
Yeah, it was totally bizarre.
Yeah.
Even back then.
That was probably red flag number 2.
Yeah.
But like again, they're master manipulators. So when you're there,
Oh yeah.
you're in that service, and you totally feel for it. You totally feel it. You're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But hindsight,
And you're so into it. The thing is, they did that to the church community too. And my impulse was, I'm going to be at the very front.
yep.
Because you're going to see I'm loyal. I was the one, I was right in front of the pulpit, right here.
Right
That's
there.
what
You
we were
see me,
saying.
I stand here with you. See me, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they, I swear, they designed the culture that way. They want people
Oh yeah.
to be constantly trying to gain their attention, their favor. They certainly have. If they don't want it, they certainly have done nothing to stop it. I mean, it's the culture
And
they created.
It felt like it went down even the way that they spoke to you. Like if they spoke with a certain tone, a certain way, you meant this much. But if they were more relaxed around you, and if they made a joke with you, oh my goodness! I remember having a conversation about coffee with one of the leader's wives in the kitchen. There was a bunch of us, and she was just going off on coffee, and I felt so a part of it because I'm like, here I am, and she's just like telling me all this information about coffee, like we're cool. So I was like, this is awesome.
Now, that should not be a relationship with a pastor. That's not how a pastor and church people should be. It's like, oh my God, they actually spoke to me and were kind.
Yeah.
Like, that should just be the standard.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's like
definitely like
for belonging and acceptance.
right. Yeah, and like celebrity status. And they condition you and they create a culture of that because they come on stage, they do their thing, they walk off stage. They don't talk to you before, after, nothing. Even the same with classes. I mean, they would come in, everybody was silent or standing or whatever we did during the time, I can't remember. And they would come in, they would say what they needed to, they would just walk right out, get their stuff and walk right out. I mean, there was like one teacher ever that, no, two, I'm sorry, two. One was it was Eric Cruz and then Joe Reeser. And those are the only two that would stay after, but they just created that culture of like, oh my gosh, this person is so above me and I need to be accepted and I need to be loved by them. And they all knew that we had issues of our own with stuff like that because they constantly talked about it in their sermons. And so they would prey on people like that, people who had family issues. That was their favorite because then they're like, oh, well, we can be spiritual mothers and fathers, right? And so we can replace that and become this, anyway.
Yeah, they would take advantage. Once they know some details about your history, they would absolutely take advantage of that.
And that, I don't know about you guys, but like I felt that fear day one. I walked in there and it was like, okay, like I went to an internship. So this whole like, we want to build ministers up to send to the world, like that wasn't me. That's not what I signed up for. So we went from an internship. I wanted to learn the ins and outs of like how, chosen ministry works, you know what I mean? Like
interesting. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And then, be part of the Camp Ramp, all that. But sorry,
What happened to Camp Ramp, Sean? What happened to Camp Ramp? I remember you mentioned 2008. I was there the first time I went was in summer of 2008, and that they were pushing it big. And when I moved in 2009, that was also a thing that affected, moving. I was super excited for Camp Ramp. What happened with that?
I remember going there a few times first year, and I think we cleared some land, like we cut weeds down, and I think that's all that was done.
So we raised how much money to weed eat?
Oh, a lot.
They've raised hundreds of thousands, and so far they have mowed the grass once.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And of course they had unpaid interns do it for them.
30 hours of service a week.
Yeah, my class had that too. 30 hours expected, and somehow still to be at
required volunteer hours.
Service and somehow have a job to pay for it all.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I had enough money saved away. I didn't have to have a job first year. So, but still, that's 30 hours of service. That's you're doing service every single day after class.
Yeah.
So it's
wow. Yeah.
How did you do that when you did have a job working at McDonald's? So you're going to school full time,
right?
And you're doing 30 hours a week or a month.
30
hours a week
A week.
on
Yeah.
top of full-time school and working at McDonald's. How
Yeah.
did you manage that?
And
Um,
chosen.
Yeah, and chosen practices and all
I guess,
that.
With great difficulty.
yeah. I guess just we had a lot of conferences my first year. They were in revival. So my first year, I think maybe a little bit in the second year, we had full on conferences. Like it felt like every other weekend.
Yeah, it was.
It was bi-weekly. We had conferences
Yeah.
bi-weekly when I
So
first moved in 2009.
so there's like 20 hours of your service week that you have to do at a conference.
Oh yeah,
Like, you're
we'd
there.
be up setting up. We'd be setting up the night before the first one, like
Mhm.
all night long. Whenever it would end, we would have these basically all nighters to clean up after.
Oh, good, yeah. Service
And then
over at
still be
12.
expected at church the next morning.
Yeah.
You know?
Or my favorite thing is I didn't have a car. And do you guys know where the Westin apartments are?
Yeah.
They're way down. I don't know, whatever. The ramp sits here and it's way down towards the highway.
Backside.
So I didn't have a car. So chosen service on chosen, like lucky if someone drives me home. If not, I have to walk that. And I did several times at night. Had to walk from the ramp. No one would give me a ride. They were just too tired or whatever. So to walk all the way home. When I don't know, whatever time I get home, and then I have to be at McDonald's at 5:30 in the morning, and I have to walk. I did that for 6 months while I was on chosen.
And that's even further than the ramp for those who don't know.
Now I also
Because you're going from the opposite way, right?
Yeah, so I'd have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, shower, and have to leave by 3:30 to walk to make it to McDonald's by 5:30.
Wow.
Yeah, it was forged in the fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, that's not why I came there. Like, I didn't come there so I could suffer that hard for it felt like nothing. Like, if I didn't work, like I tried my best. Like, looking back, I did. I tried at the time. I tried as good as I thought I could, and I just with nothing to show for. Like, year after year, month after month, like there was nothing. There was nothing showing up after doing everything that they said. After I was on chosen. I thought that was it. I thought I had it all together, and then I was asked to be off chosen, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't. Like, I understand what she was saying, and then I'm asked to be part of the school, on the teaching team for the School of Performing Arts. I'm like, awesome, here we go. And then I think I was only on there for a year, maybe 2 years, and then I wasn't asked to come back and teach. They just didn't ask me for that last year, and then that was my last year in Hamilton. My very last year, I was barely part of the community. I was just there working at Hardee's at the time, hanging out, I guess.
And what experiences led to your departure? Can you tell us more about that?
A lot happened with Casey and Lindsay's situation. Rumors got spread. I have no idea. I worked for Lindsay in the School of Performing Arts. So, like, every encounter I had with Casey, every single one was terrible. Absolutely terrible. So she's saying these things to us. We were her dancing friends, her little circle of friends. She's explaining kind of what's going on, like, hey, this is happening. And I believe every word she says because I have no good experiences with Casey. He's a dick. Like, that's my experience with him. He's just he doesn't care about us at all unless you have something special. Like, if you have,
Casey was our pastor, by the way, everybody.
yeah, and I guess that's the thing. If you didn't have a je ne sais quoi, like a quality, you were ignored. You were forgotten about. You
would barely talk to people. He was rude and off-putting.
Unless he was making fun of them.
Yes.
Yeah, he would make fun of people right in front of them. Like,
yeah,
with other guys around him, he'd make fun of somebody nearby.
Yeah, it was rough.
But so Lindsay tells you they're getting divorced, and
so, like, those rumors spread and everything spreads around, and it's just, I was one of those friends on her side spewing poison, and literally just I felt like I got blacklisted. Like, I remember saying hi to someone at a service. Like, I came in, I was like, hey, and they're like, oh, hey, how you been? The next time I saw them, they didn't even look at me.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
Same situation. Like, I saw them on the same side of, like, the auditorium, and I was like, oh, hey. Nothing. They just turned and walked away, and I was like, what? And then the announcement comes. I'm like, okay, I can put two and two together. I see what's going on. So that's
the announcement.
Yeah, when they announced that Casey and Lindsay were
okay.
separating for a little bit because whatever. I was like, oh, okay, now I get why people are really talking to me right now. I can put two and two together. I see what's going on. And
So you experienced some of that famous ramp blacklisting that they do.
yeah, immediately. It was
Where
like, it was
suddenly the
shocking.
people who are telling you that like you're going to be used by God and they're praying for you and anointing you with oil one day, the next day can pull that all away
Yeah,
and be like, you're out of here. We're not even going to look at you or talk to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point I got so fed up with it that I went to Micah, and I remember I asked him this like loudly because I was just kind of upset. And I asked him, I was like, I feel like I'm unwelcomed here in this building. Why is that? And he looks at me, he goes, Sean, he's like, I know where you're coming from. I know why you're asking this. You have not come up in any of our conversations. I was like, are you sure? He's like, yes. He's like, okay, because I don't know if I'm going to come back. like, I don't know what I've done.
That's
And
awful.
that was kind of it. I'm sorry you feel that way. I was like, okay. So that was that was the last service I was at for a while, and then I went to one more on my last day.
So when you came to one of the teachers, one of the pastors, and told them you felt like you were being treated differently or unwelcome, you told them that you were being hurt in some way, and they couldn't help you. They had no real help for you.
No, it was a cold, I'm sorry you feel that way, like a shutdown. Like, we haven't talked about you.
Well, is that what you experience anytime you would come to them with
Every time.
pain or something wrong?
Every time. There was like, everyone has your struggles, and like I'm struggling with these sins, and I'd go to them, and it wasn't encouraging. Like, it felt I was so scared to tell them that like, hey, I'm having these issues, and it just felt like I was so afraid for them to know, because then they could either use it against me or they would just kick me out of school.
Yeah.
And I was threatened to be kicked out of school because when I went to tell someone, hey, like I'm struggling with these issues, they weren't a teacher. They said, okay, I suggest you tell your teacher because they're in the school, like they're your teacher. Okay, I had no problem with that. So I went and told them. The teacher, gave me a little, I was like, thank you for telling me, gave me a little advice. Again, it was very like casual, very standard. It was like a standard conversation. And then he asked me to go back to that person and, consult with them, have them be your accountability person, all that. And when I go back to that person, first thing they said was like, I'm glad you did, because I would have had you kicked out of school if you didn't.
Whoa. What? That's wild.
Another red flag.
Yeah.
If you didn't come to them, they would have had you kicked out.
Yeah, if I
Wow.
didn't go to my teacher and tell them what I was doing, then he would have threatened to have me kicked out of school.
Wow.
Wow.
Like, it took all the courage, like, to muster to like come and like be like, hey, like I've tried to deal with this myself. I can't.
Mhm.
This is an issue I'm having. I need some kind of help.
Right.
It's just, and then I just like got passed back and forth. Like, go tell this person. It was like mom and dad. Like, go ask your mom, and you go ask mom. Mom goes, go ask your dad. It was just that, and then it was like, oh, good thing you did that, because you wouldn't be here anymore. You didn't share your information with everyone. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and I know whenever you talk to a teacher or someone, I know that they discuss it amongst themselves, because other teachers will come and have a conversation with me about that.
Wow.
For one, I thought I told one person in confidence. I didn't tell
Right.
for the board and confess my sins.
Exactly.
One person.
Yeah, I can tell you behind the scenes with the instructors, because I was one. They gossip all the time about students and other ministers and anybody that comes to mind. So any kind of thing that pops up, oh, you're not going to believe this, but you don't have to ask. I just happen to be around. You're not going to believe this, blah 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 about these people and those people, and just constantly behind the scenes talking down on people, people
Wow.
unchosen, people on the ministry team.
Mhm.
That was very common there.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question for you. Were you there during the time that Andrew High was on Chosen?
Yes and no. So, all right, here we go. Big story time, everyone. So Andrew High, he was a member of Chosen. He was Chosen's golden boy. He was the guy on the videos, like the VHSs and stuff that I watched, that I copied. Okay, he was a phenomenal dancer. He had passion, intensity, and the best thing like about it was he was still masculine. Because that's one thing in the dancer world, like you don't want to be feminine, and that was another
That was big for the ramp.
big thing for the ramp.
Wow.
We couldn't do any bent wrist, nothing.
No bent wrist.
No bent wrist. It was a serious thing. We couldn't look we couldn't look feminine. We couldn't look soft. We couldn't look any type of gay, any type of homosexual. If it would reference, like none of it. We had to look straight.
Well, that's why so many of the guys' parts of those dances were just kind of like coming out and like freaking out. I was watching some today, like for the song "Dance." There's a part where you could all just kind of come out and start like shaking around.
Yeah, because it's like the move requires like your hips to be bent, but like guys can't do that, so they would modify it, and it just looked like dancing gorillas sometimes.
Yeah.
So they would literally tell y'all you couldn't like move your hips, you couldn't bend your wrest. Like they would say those things to you. Wow.
Certain moves, like we can't do this, can't. It was a small box, so there's no thinking outside the box. It was a small box. You have to move a certain way.
But Andrew was good at maintaining that.
Yes, he was good at maintaining that and keeping it like masculine. So for me, growing up watching those videos, he kind of became like my hero. Like I looked up to him, you know. And when they announced the camp, I really wanted to go, and then the school. So I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna meet the guy I've looked up to my whole life. So when I get there in 2010, he's not a part of Chosen. He's around in the community. He's hanging out, doing whatever. And then about the same time I go on Chosen, he's back on Chosen. So back in hindsight, probably trying to save Chosen with some good dancers, kind of a thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I remember there was at least a couple times he was on Chosen when I moved. Again, he was very their point guy. Him and Jada's husband at the time, Willie Joe.
Willie Joe, yeah,
was also a very masculine dancer. They were their 2 point guys when I went there, which Willie Joe also is in prison, or last I heard was in prison. But so these were their two main guys, and he was actually the first. Andrew High was the first guy that welcomed me there when I was there. He was very, very welcoming. He's very has out of everybody has a very welcoming kind of thing.
He's very charismatic. He's very charismatic.
Yeah.
And so he came back on Chosen while you were on Chosen.
Yeah, he came back on Chosen. I think it was the big Chattanooga Winter Ramp 2012.
Oh, yeah.
Big one. He came back. He was a part of the Chosen dance team on that. And then was on Chosen for a bit, and then I don't know the timeline of when he moved, but he did eventually move away from Hamilton before I had left. But during that time, Andrew High manipulated me into SA. Yeah, it's been something I've been trying to forget for like 10 years, but it's something that's always in the back of your head. It never goes away. It's all, and it happened very, very soon into my year starting there. So about 2012. So imagine being on Chosen and having this like disgusting sin happening in the back, like
by somebody that you maybe even slightly idolized, but somebody you looked up to very, very much.
Oh yeah. And and it was such a weird. It was so weird. Like if you could see a lot like part of it, or you could say that it is kind of like more grooming, because there was a lot of just like it built up over time. Like we became friends. Obviously, it's how it starts. And then it was just like these little things that happen, and then like all of a sudden this truth or dare game, and it's like nothing weird, but like just why? You know what I mean? Like. And because I said dare, I have to do it. But it's it wasn't anything weird, but that's how it started. And then it got a little bit more, and then eventually,
Yeah.
it was one of those things, like, again, after we just talked about, like, already hard to go to leadership with, personal issues. Like, this is this was different. So there's no way I can tell you about this. Like, I don't like conflict. So if I tell someone what's going on, I feel like it's just gonna come down on me because I'm a
Mm.
part of the thing. Because at when it was happening, it's not coming across my mind as SA. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not. I definitely 100% didn't want it ever. Absolutely did not. But, like, that first time, yes, and then because of the previous little things of, like, the grooming, where it's like the little things, he knew what he could get away with.
Mm.
And he kind of just, like, tested the waters. Can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? And then it happened, and I broke. Like, I didn't know at the time, but, like, something in me just snapped, and I just shut down completely. So
Man.
I had this. The real me was this kid struggling with that issue more than anything else. Was that issue was on my mind? But to everyone else, you guys all know me and what I looked like. That was all a facade.
Yeah, man,
And
Sean, I'm so sorry that you
Mm-hmm.
experienced that and experienced that there with somebody that you trusted and respected and was put up in a place of authority and position. Um, how did leadership find out about it?
I actually don't know if they know about me and Andrew.
Really?
I mean, unless it's from this.
Well,
I definitely.
I do know that following when that occurred, they did remove him from Chosen, and he was then over Chosen to the kids' dance ministry.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine who's a wealthy man in the community at the time that was a big donor had a child, a young son, that was supposed to be going on a dance trip, and he was warned directly by Karen, don't let your son go on this dance trip. So they absolutely knew about it. I don't know how wasn't sure if you had reported it or
No.
how it came out, but they absolutely knew about it because they warned him not to let his son go on the dance team
Mhm.
trip to Florida with Andrew High. And
Right.
then Andrew High went on to offend against minors and is currently in prison serving a prison sentence because of it. So that
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was curious of how they got the knowledge and handled that knowledge. We haven't been able to discern that quite yet, but they absolutely knew.
So if they know, the only people who knew would that I think would have said anything would have been Lindsay. Um,
Oh, okay. See, and there was a chosen meeting that Janelle was in because she had been dating this pedophile, and they were there. But quite a few had chosen. I've heard from multiple ones in that meeting. Four individuals in that meeting where she was defending him, but they were trying to decide, like, what do we do
Mhm.
as chosen members? Because they were kind of like elder chosen members. What do we do? Because
yeah.
this isn't right, you know. And so they reached out to me about that because they were in a struggle on how to handle it. Obviously, under similar oppression as you, being senior at that time, they were called. I think they were calling them elder chosen because there
Yeah.
was kind of like the new chosen on the
Yeah.
dance team, and then there was the elder chosen that was supposed to be like the mentors of the new chosen.
Mhm.
And they were all in that meeting. And so it definitely was known by the leadership because it was known by the elder chosen.
But there's also other stories with Andrew High
Mhm.
that people have told you, Stephen, and the rest of us. Like, we know that there was a conference where he started sexting a child and sending a child explicit pictures of himself. And apparently, for the speaking with the parent of that victim, the parent told us that they confronted Karen about what had happened, and so Karen was very much aware of it and allegedly tried to pay the parents to keep the story quiet.
Yeah, wow. Well, and there's another individual that reached out to me who was 15 when he was going to the ramp, and he would stay there because he knew Andrew High's roommates, and Andrew High would invite him to go skinny dipping, of all places, at Camp Ramp at the Rock Hole, where they do all their baptisms.
I don't know the year from it. Yeah, no, that's so. It was not a one-time thing. It was
Yeah.
It was something that he was a serial offender.
Yeah, and so I had no knowledge of him like being like that at all. So again, it's almost like here's this guy I look up to, and there's this disgusting thing that's happening, you know, and it's like, but it's when I tell people, the very few people I've told, I've always say that he manipulated me or he took advantage of me, because that's, you know, I didn't know the word grooming, but like that's much
100%. Right.
he figured out that I couldn't say no, and he could just do it. But I heard this from Lindsay. She told me the story before RSM started. There was a situation with Andrew High at a camp in Hackleburg. There was a camp booth up there. Something happened during that, and because of that, that's why he wasn't on Chosen when we arrived. And then that kid, I don't know if this is the same story, but
I think so.
It was right when we started, and I think during your guys' first year too. There was another situation where Chosen with Andrew High, where Chosen had a meeting and he told them what happened, and I don't know what that was, but I heard from someone who was a part of that meeting that happened in 2011, and that's about the same time Andrew, you know, and me became good friends. Was that about that same time?
So are you telling me that there were multiple incidents, at least two incidents that they knew about before you got there, and because they didn't handle it properly,
Yes.
now you're dealing with the outcomes of that, and then now subsequently, after he left, because they never handled it, minors were abused, and he finally got a prison sentence because of it.
Right.
How did it
awful.
feel when you saw for the first time his mugshot?
I had a physical reaction. I turned red. I started to sweat. Like, I started crying. I can't tell you how many people I called. Like, I called my friend who I briefly told the story to. Like, and I called her up and I was like, I'm in tears. She thought I was like in a car accident. I'm like, you're never gonna believe this. Like, he's in prison. Like, that guy, like, I used some choice words. He's in prison. And then I hung up, called my dad. Hung up, called my mom. Like, everyone who knew, like, it was such a moment. And in that moment, there was so much healing. Like, it was so, like, eye-opening to realize that, oh my gosh, it wasn't me. Like, it wasn't me that drew him to me. It was just him. And he took me because I couldn't say no. You know?
So seeing that justice being served
it
really did something for your heart.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to say, like, I know I should feel bad, but, like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't.
Yeah.
He's in prison for his own actions, and there are people who...
Well, he should have been in prison sooner.
Yeah.
And there were multiple subsequent violations, offenses, because they didn't handle it right, and they didn't report it to the authorities like they should have done as automatic reporters. Being a minor was involved, and the parent came to them, and they did not report it to the authorities or the police department, and he goes on to subsequently offend over and over again until finally someone had... it was one of the parents of the young child actually did report it, and why he's in prison now.
Yeah. Right. So if the ramp had handled what they knew the right way at first, then less people, including you, would have been harmed by this person.
Yeah. My life would be so different if I never met Andrew High. I would be a completely different person. Like, meeting him was such, like, it was so bad.
Wow.
There was nothing good that came from him at all. Like, if I never met Andrew, my life would be so much better. Even, like, still go through the ramp and deal with what I dealt with exactly the same, just cut him out. I would be so much better.
How are you doing now and recovering from everything?
Oh man, I just from this past, like, ever since you started all this, like, it kind of like reopened that wound because I've been trying to just forget and move on, like kind of like
Yeah.
let the wound heal but still have the scar, like kind of a thing, just
Yeah.
whatever. But you started that, and I'm hearing these stories of everyone's experience, and like is it wasn't just me. It wasn't like I didn't do it right. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
there's just like I feel like I've grown up so much because I've been trapped as like that 22, 23-year-old kid for the last 10 years. Like I have felt the same because I have these thoughts that never leave. It's just they're always there, always reminding me like, hey, remember, like you can't be a genuine person, or you can't be like
Yeah.
worthy of stuff. You can't be like superior. Not that's horrible to say. You can't be proud of yourself because of all the stuff that's happened and all the stuff that you did. And the
Mhm.
biggest thing that killed me for years was you like I could have just said no like one time. Actually, no. I know Andrew High. It wouldn't have been a one time no for him. I would have had to repeatedly tell him to like stop, like to the point where I may have had to actually
Right.
physically hurt him, so he would have got the point I meant. You know what I mean? Because he's
Yeah.
Yeah.
smothering. He's just
And
smothering.
that's your, that's definitely grooming behavior, Sean, and that's not your fault ever. I don't want you to ever have that thought in your head that it's not your fault because that is what groomers do. And that's what people are not getting that we're continually talking to. It does not matter if you're not a teen. It does not matter if you are an adult. That is grooming behavior. It's manipulative and it is assault. It is it is SA and it's not fair because you're sitting here questioning yourself and you're dealing with these thoughts and it wasn't your fault. That's manipulation, that's grooming behavior. And so it doesn't mean that, just because you're an adult that you can't have these things happen to you because they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sean, I just want to let you know, I'm sure the other, all the chats are blowing up, but my chat, everybody is just so thankful for your courage and your bravery to speak up, and just so many people just saying they're so proud of you, and thankful, and and I'm thankful for
Yes.
you and for
Mhm.
you reaching out.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad that that seeing and that was kind of that was the hope when I first posted, is that if people come out and they do share, they'll see that they weren't alone in all of
Right.
this.
Mhm.
That was the biggest thing. Like, I mean, as soon as that deconstruction page, everyone was putting their stories. Like, it was heartbreaking. Like,
Yeah.
everyone who goes to the ramp, we all okay, maybe about 90% of people go. We've all looked up to the ramp. Like,
Yeah.
I'd go so far to say is we put the ramp on a pedestal above even our own churches.
Oh yeah.
I know I did.
They told us to essentially.
Oh yeah, I know I did because I mean, no offense, I love my church back home. You guys are awesome, whatever. But like, they weren't modern. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I mean, they're singing like "Dancing with My Father God in Fields of Grace." Like that song is, it's not for me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, here's the ramp, and it's this music that take out the words, the music will get you going.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
it's music that us kids can relate to. So it's like
Mhm.
okay, there's an like automatically engaged with music that we can get into. And then you look up and you see them all just full on worshiping God, just as hard as they can. And as a kid, you're like, this is amazing,
Mhm.
And then
Man.
to go there and to be the first class of RSM. Oh my, that was so cool. And you guys went there. They I don't know if this is true or not, but they would say like they prayed over every application and
Yeah.
they chose us.
That's what they would say. I was there
Amazing.
You know what
before,
I
so
mean?
I was there in 2009. And
Yeah.
then when the RSM kicking off was actually what opened up a lot of opportunities for me, because we had
Okay. Okay.
all these voluntold slaves that we got to wrangle. So I was the voluntold coordinator and doing all the stuff at conferences and making everybody do
Oh
everything.
yeah.
So yeah, and they did say that we prayed over every application, and
Mhm.
and all that. They say these things to try to make you feel special
Oh,
and connected, but then when you get there, you learn
it's
very
so
quick that you're
it's
not
so different.
special,
No,
Mhm.
no.
and you're told that. And no,
Oh yeah.
and it's so abusive. This is the strange thing, and maybe you can speak to this too, because I experienced it. They were so abusive that if you weren't being abused, you felt like something was wrong, and you were
Yes.
telling your leaders like, "Cut on me."
Yes.
Do you know
Yeah.
that term?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Tell
If
me, tell me what that term means to you and how you experience that.
say it again.
The cut on me. Tell me what that term means to you,
Yeah.
like your experience of that, because I heard that a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
students would be like, "You, I don't feel like I'm. You need to cut on me," and like
Yeah,
they're
that's one of
begging
those
for
classic
rebuke.
ramp phrases that sounds so weird outside of the ramp.
Dude,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, you guys heard this too. Like our first day class, first class, our first day was like a Holy Ghost filled, just bomb, Holy Ghost bomb. That's what they used to say, right? That set the precedent. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry, you guys, but it did. So the next class, like we felt like was going to be just as good, and then it turned into rebukes. Sometimes it was Holy Ghost filled, like Jason Adar's classes with faith, and he would do the stool, and we're all freaking out.
Yeah.
Awesome moment, and then the next day, like just an absolute rebuke, and then all of a sudden, like 2 days, and there's no rebuke, and people are like,
It started to feel weird.
It started to feel
we're
weird.
expecting-
Like, are y'all not paying attention to us right now? Like, are you disconnected?
yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody asked what the term was. So the term that they used a lot was "cut on me,"
cut on me. So it's
which meant like,
correct.
there's these where they removed the bad branches and whatever these biblical things. And so basically, what you're asking for is like, chew my butt out for something that I don't know I've even done anything wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I don't feel like a legitimate son or daughter to this ministry because you're not cutting on me.
Yeah, and on that, it's because you're not cutting on me. I feel like you don't see me, you don't care.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
like here, just skating through, not really getting rebukes. Not getting any words. You're just kind of like.
They literally trained and groomed people to request abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you,
Exactly.
whenever what happened with Andrew happened, did you ever, or did you just feel the whole time that like you couldn't tell anyone because they wouldn't be understanding, or did you feel like they might even like blame or get you in trouble for
Blame.
it?
It was. I mean, of course, I can't tell you how many times he said I couldn't tell anyone.
He told you that you.
So many times. He's like, no one can know. No one please don't let anyone know. And there someone in like the community did eventually, like they had a word from God or they sensed something was going on, and they told it like verbatim, like this is happening. Something's going on between you and Andrew, and it has to stop. That was all I needed. That moment, I literally was like, thank you. This is all I needed, and I'm pretty sure I just went and called him and was like, this has to stop. Like, we're done. Somebody just read my mail and called us out. Like, stop. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, you like, it felt like I was breaking up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Like, that's how it felt. So I think that's kind of why I really couldn't say what was happening, because I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
I couldn't really tell someone like, oh, this is SA.
No, I've had that experience. I was essayed from the time I was 8 to 12, and I never told anybody until I was 35 years old because I didn't realize that was what happened. Because
Yeah.
I thought
Right.
like, and it wasn't until my daughter was 8 years old, my oldest daughter was 8 years old, that I realized what this
Yeah.
is not,
Mhm.
that was not okay. Like, that's what opened my eyes when I saw it through a father's gaze to his children, that that was not okay. But I know how that feels. Like, you feel like I did something wrong. I was participating in this.
Yes.
I made these mistakes. I'm going to get in trouble. And you
Yeah.
have all of that shame and condemnation and that weight that it just like eats you away from the inside out.
Which is
Perfectly said. Perfectly said.
It's so not what an environment something like the ramp should be cultivating. They should be creating a place where if something happens to me, I'll be supported and protected, and I can tell them, and they'll care and they'll love.
No, there was none of that.
There was none of that.
There was so another essay story that happened to me at the ramp. There was one time, it was during a conference. I think Eddie James' team was there. I know this person was on the Eddie James ministry at some point. I don't remember if they were at the time, but they were in our community for a while, kind of by themselves. And I was over at Andrew's house. They were there too, so like nothing could happen, right? So I thought it was a safe night. I woke up in the middle of the night and this guy's hands was down my pants. And I froze. Luckily there was a noise that happened and, you know, it separated, but I was like, I didn't know what to do. Couldn't go back to sleep, couldn't do anything. And this time I actually went and told someone. I told them leadership and nothing was done. I was uncomfortable to even say the person's name too, and he was like, no, tell me the name. Like, I couldn't even finish the sentence of like, I don't feel comfortable telling you his name. Tell me his name. Okay, told him his name, didn't really know who the guy was, and told him what happened. After the conversation, I 100% felt like that what happened was my fault.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
Said sin attracts sin.
Sin attracts sin?
Yeah, I don't.
That's what the leader told you? Wait, hold up.
Yeah,
The leader at the ramp, are you able to name him?
Brian Beasley.
Brian Beasley.
I told him
When you reported being SA'd by
Which should have been
somebody
reported to the authorities.
that was from EJM,
yeah,
this was somebody that was supposed to be trusted. Your leader, Brian Beasley,
yeah,
he told you sin attracts sin. Did I hear that right?
yes. He I should have called him out. You know, I should have called out sin. Da 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 da. I said, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I froze. But yeah,
Man, I'm so sorry.
it was.
I wish I would have been in leadership at that time and you told me, because sin attracts something different in my house.
That is
Yeah.
the most victim blaming bullshit.
And-
I can't believe. I mean, well, I can believe it, but I'm just. It's so shocking.
Can you imagine these leaders telling their children this? Like if your own child came to you and said, "Dad, this happened to me." Oh, sweetie,
Are you kidding me?
I know.
sin attracts sin.
Well, that's the thing is I don't believe that they are keeping their kids safe. If they can't keep other people's kids safe when they come to their ministry, they're not keeping
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, and I remember this part of the conversation with Brian, and I don't know, it's just always stuck. But so I tell him the conversation, or like kind of what happened. Like I said, like the scene of how it could have happened, and he basically just picked up right up on it and told me what I was gonna tell him. He was like, "Oh, you probably like overheard some like joke or something like that and got it in his head." That's almost exactly how it happened. So that really shook me off guard. And then he's like, did you say anything to this guy? Did you call him out? I was like, no, I just froze. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was a little scared. And he's like, well, man, and it's like sin attracts sin. So like, if you don't call out, and
Wow.
it was just the most blanket, cold, like I felt so disgusting with myself.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
felt upset at myself, mad at myself after that conversation with Brian.
Well, did he ever follow up with you?
Nope.
Did he report
Or
it to
the
his
police?
authorities? Like,
No
or-
idea. I told him, and I expected something to be done. Nothing was. The guy that did it to me came up to me a couple months later and completely apologized. And at that point, you know, I forgave him. You know, I'm like, it's cool. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm past it. I harbored no ill feelings towards him because of the conversation with Brian.
It's your fault.
How
Yeah,
can
your
I do
your
that?
sin brought it onto yourself.
Yeah, it's like,
And Brian, I mean, this is the guy, if anyone watching doesn't know very well, he was in charge of the youth at the ramp for years and years. And eventually he handed it off to some other person to be the youth pastor. But Brian was the youth pastor forever. I mean,
A youth pastor.
before he was called the youth pastor of the ramp, they gave him this title of like youth pastor of like, what was it, of Hamilton?
Yeah,
basically.
something like that.
Yeah, he was in the high schools. Yeah, he was like a minister over all their athletic departments there.
So the guy going into the high schools and talking to high school students and hearing from high school students, getting them to tell him their stories of trauma and things happening to them, because these kids, I mean, it involved kids who've gone through everything.
Mhm.
And he would then use those testimonies, those stories, as something to put up on his stage. And meanwhile, this is how he deals with stuff that's coming to him is he just
Yeah.
victim blames, doesn't get the police involved, doesn't report it, and this is who the ramp trusts to watch kids. It's horrible.
And that's another mandatory reporter.
Right.
Like there's
Right.
legal charges for mandatory reporters not doing their job because this was something that he woke up happening to him. SA at the simple, like no grooming, no nothing, like waking up, being groped. That is bottom line, should have been reported.
And
Absolutely.
not only is Sean having to deal with the trauma of what's happening to him with Andrew, now this new person, and now he's being told this is your fault and having to deal with that within himself. Oh my God.
I'm so
I'm
sorry.
so sorry, Sean.
All of that whilst on Chosen.
Wow.
So having
I'm
to
so
stand
sorry.
there.
And the closest circle, you're still not safe.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you're probably more exposed the closer you are, if we're being honest.
Yeah. And so like having to stand on the stage and be that vessel, having to reflect God, but feeling so disgusted with myself because it's like I can't reflect God because so much is going on.
Yeah, no wonder you had so much terror. I mean, you're trying to like put on this performance in a sense to be okay,
Yeah.
to like look okay, even though on the inside you're not okay. You know, like these things are happening. You do tell somebody and it doesn't help. And now you got to stand up there and then you're like not anointed enough. We don't want you on Chosen because you've just been completely degraded.
Yeah. So all of that, and it's like, oh, by the way, like you don't carry enough of the anointing to be on stage is basically what that conversation felt like. Like you don't have enough that we can use, so we're gonna fill your spot with someone who does.
So that's what I was going to ask you, Sean. So, with this stuff with Andrew, was you were still on Chosen, is what you're telling me, and then all of a sudden you're just randomly let go from Chosen?
Yeah.
Was this after you confided in somebody about what was happening?
That timeline, I'm not sure. I want to say, I'm not sure. I want to say no. I want to say that happened after I was asked to step down from Chosen, and then the second guy showed up. But the only person who would have known that could have made its way to leadership would have been through Lindsay.
Okay.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Lindsay is Karen Wheaton's daughter. She is leadership.
Yeah.
Not anymore. They've removed her from all those things now on their website and stuff. But at that time, she was leadership. Her husband is the premier pastor there. At that time, he kind of isn't anymore. But those were like that's Karen Wheaton's daughter and son-in-law. Those and her other daughter and son-in-law are the most influential people, leaders on staff. If they know, she knows, like because they gossip about everything anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, her knowing was the same as reporting it to Karen herself.
And we have multiple people with insight into these stories that have confirmed what Karen and other leaders know. I mean, we have, for one, like I said, a parent of a child that Andrew sent explicit images to, who told Stephen and I specifically that they confronted Karen. We have another person who came on Stephen's post, someone who lived in the community forever, basically, who shared a story about Karen telling him about Andrew's behavior. So again, confirming that she knew. You told us about that story where Andrew told a whole meeting at Chosen about what's going on, and they knew. So in fact, we also heard from people who lived with Andrew, who were his roommates, and they knew something fishy was going on. I don't know if they knew details about specific survivors, but they definitely knew something was going on. So people were aware. The ramp was aware. Brian Beasley was made aware of other essays, and clearly didn't even make an attempt to handle it right. I think their goal, it sounds to me, was just to shut this down as fast as they can and keep it quiet.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It just felt like suppression. Like it's like, well, sin attracts sin. Shh.
Yeah.
Because not even like, I'm sorry that happened to you. I don't remember that.
Right, yeah, because he's
And look, I don't want. I mean, I'm not trying. I don't want to get too much into speculation territory, but it seems to me like when people have that kind of reaction, where they're just like, "No, don't talk about it. Let's just forgive, move
Because they
on."
know there's other stuff.
There's
going
other
on.
stuff going on, and if you pick out one of it, you might find more things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the script they
Mhm.
run. I mean, that's from all of the stories that we've heard from, specifically from SA survivors. They isolate the survivor, they remove the survivor. The offenders are kept around for some bizarre reason and covered, and then it's all hushed up, silenced. Sometimes there's money paid out, uh, purported allegedly, documents signed speculatively as NDAs. I mean, this has been a pattern of behavior that's gone on throughout this whole period of time.
Absolutely.
And then so many, just like this one, we would have never heard about if you hadn't shared, that was reported to Brian
Right.
Beasley, that Karen probably never heard about. If
And
we're
you know
being
what?
It
honest,
probably
nobody
stopped
did.
at Brian.
Yeah.
Probably stopped at
Just
Brian.
like Andrew should have been and could have been stopped with survivor number one and wasn't, and now all the rest until somebody finally put him in prison, you know? And same with this guy. Who knows if he's also done this to other people that, that you reported to Brian. And it's just awful because, like you said, you could have been a totally different person, and this could have and should have stopped with number one. And
Yeah. So, Sean, I know we've talked a lot about your experience, and we've had you for a while. We don't want to keep you all night long. Really appreciate your time. Get you a little cat pet in there. That's our emotional cat. Our emotional cat.
Yeah,
Uh,
God complex. We always provide emotional support.
our emotional support animal.
For
The support.
animals.
That's what I was looking for. But how are you doing now? What's life like for you now, man? I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're doing and
Um.
what's going on for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I mean, it's not great. Um. Ever since ever since I left the ramp, it was bad. Like I didn't leave on good terms. I left completely broken. My faith was shattered. Like I didn't care anymore. Like at all what happened. So I went back home. I just tried to forget everything that I learned, and basically it felt like I was starting over. And fortunately, I had like friends from high school who they were like at the last year of college or just out of college, so they were still in that college party kind of era. So as soon as I left, like I just threw myself straight into that. Like
Yeah.
it was like the weekends we go out and drink, and I just slowly forgot about everything. But I never took care of it. I
Yeah.
never got with it. And seriously, up until your post, like every day has been like a
Yeah.
surviving. And I mean, there was a time
Wow.
afterwards. I lived out in New Mexico, and I was super most depressed I've ever been. I was just not in a good place. Got into some pretty hard drugs, spiraled downwards. Um,
Wow.
a knife was looking pretty friendly one night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Yeah, and it was a wake up call. Thankfully, this is so strange to say, but I was coming off of like a binge on drugs, and
Mm.
because of the emotional state I was in, because of that knife, that it was a wake up call. Like I was like that thought was a little bit too much, and then it spiraled downward from there because it takes a while to recover.
Yeah.
From that moment, like I checked myself in for like therapy. So I had two different therapists,
That's great.
Yeah.
and it helped a little bit. But I couldn't get away from the drugs because they're just everywhere in New Mexico. Don't ever live there. It's bad. Albuquerque's horrible. But I moved away from that, and now I'm recovering from that stuff as well
Mm.
as all of the suppressed stuff from my time at the ramp. But up until when you made that post, like there's been so much healing in this past few months that like
Oh, that's great.
now I'm ready to go find a therapist and a doctor and like take care of. Before I just wanted to close that wound, never talk about it again, just bury the whole thing.
Wow.
But
Yeah, and that's so awesome to hear. That's our whole purpose, is to just give a voice. And
yeah,
as you've seen with the students coming out, whether they come on the podcast or willing to or not, everybody's at a different place and how they're willing to discuss what they've been through. But I've heard a lot of that type of report, and people want to come at us and attack us, but it's hearing stories like yours
Yeah.
that is not only the injustice of it that keeps us going, but the healing of being known and being heard and being seen. And I want you to really feel that tonight, Sean. You're being seen. All of these people in my chat, I'm sure in the other
Mm-hmm.
chats,
Oh, yeah.
you're being
Yes.
seen and known in a way that I don't know that you've experienced. And I just want you to really like take that in. I'm glad that it's opened up your heart to pursue more healing. But that's the path. You know, you're not alone, and this is not an
Absolutely.
isolated incident.
Yeah.
And there's more to come. But I'm so grateful that you've been the tip of the spear, willing to come on and share your story
Oh yeah.
and and really break
Yes.
this open. I know that you've given us a lot of your time tonight and come to Joey's house and everything, but I just want you to know how grateful I am, and the people that are viewing on my stream, that how they're communicating their hearts to you. You have so many people behind you. There's more for you than is
Thank you,
against
God.
you. You know.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
actually kind of glad the little technical difficulties, because then I got to see the layout. Because I was so nervous to like, I didn't know how it was gonna go, and I'm like, I gotta get my story. Like, I'm shaking the whole time, like my hands. I do that. It's no big deal. But seeing how supportive you guys were last week when we just kind of talked about everything just really gave me a boost of confidence. And then I told Joey, like, I was a nervous wreck driving here. As soon as I saw him open the door for me, I was like, I can do it.
That's so
Oh, I love
awesome. That's
that.
so awesome.
And it needs to be done. Like, after hearing all of those stories about what happened, like, I can't stay silent, especially being a victim. Like, I have firsthand experience, so it's not right what goes on there.
Yeah, and one thing that's been in my heart lately, even dealing, even shifting that view from victim to survivor. You were victimized, yes, but you're a survivor and you're coming out of it
Yeah.
in a
Mm-hmm.
better way and healing. And I know whatever your life looks like in the future, these things uh, tend to work in our favor, and the karmic balances of the universe, God,
Mm-hmm.
whatever your faith is at this point. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know about your faith right now. I know a lot of people have struggled with faith after, um, but whatever that is, man, you're coming out and things are going to be looking up for you, especially in your healing journey.
Yeah, Sean, thank you so much. I know it takes a lot of so much courage to share what you've been through, and I'm really glad to hear that you're doing better and that you've been able to heal so much.
Yeah.
And I want to
Yeah.
say to anyone else who's watching who maybe you're also someone who's gone through abuse at any church, but specifically we're looking at the ramp right now. But if you're someone who wants to, well, we're not just looking for people to come on our show and tell their story. That's not the goal. But what we
Mhm.
want to do is connect you with a victim's advocate and a lawyer. If
Yes.
that's what you're
Yes.
looking for. But what's important is your own healing, and for you to know that you're safe and that you can share your story if you want to. But there's no expectation to do that. If you want to reach out to Jennifer or Stephen or me, we'll connect you with that victim's advocate and that lawyer. And I just want you to have that support and that help. And then if you do want to do what Sean did and also share your story, you're of course, we'll talk about that, but that's just not what the expectation is from the get-go. So reach out if that's something that you're interested in.
Absolutely. And yes, thank you so much, Sean. I think you've given a voice to many who have felt silenced for so long, decades. I know it's been so long since you've been there. And yeah, I think there is so much healing that comes from just talking about it because you realize you're not alone. And unfortunately, this has happened to many people there. And we all are backing you, like Steven said. We do this because of you and people who have survived this place. We don't do this for any kind of notoriety or whatever they are claiming out there. We do this for you. So thank you so much for your time and just being so vulnerable and transparent with us. And I know that does take a lot. And once again, I just want to say none of it is your fault, Sean, and don't ever even let that thought enter your head.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's that's been a hard one to shake, but like, it's just I'll have that
Yeah.
thought and I'll just kind of like think about it, and I'm like, no, No,
No,
Yeah.
like
no.
no, it wasn't because if Andrew High wasn't there, it would not have happened to me.
Exactly.
Just
Right.
from that
Right.
alone,
Yeah, it's not your fault,
No.
man. Well, I know it's getting late. I thank everybody for joining us and for hanging with us this whole
Yes.
time across all of our streams. This has been such a beautiful time getting to reconnect with Sean. Thank you for joining the God Complex podcast. We'll have it uploaded soon, and we'll talk to you next time. Stay tuned for our next interview or next podcast, whatever it'll look like. But thank you so much, Sean.
Thank
thank you
Thank you,
guys.
Sean. Yeah. Take
Thank
care of
you.
yourself.
All
You
right.
guys have a good night. Signing off.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, y'all.